I'm here with Dr. Waine Kong, the CEO of ABC. What is ABC?
That's the Association of Black Cardiologists, and we're celebrating 34 years of improving health in the black community.
And I'm also here with Tanya Jones, MD.
Yeah.
Tell us something about you.
Well, I'm a former medical school professor and psychologist, but I'm really more working in the area of medical intuition.
What I want to talk to you about is a lot of black people, African Americans, are dying at an early age. Heart disease, strokes, etc. What can we do to prevent this? You want to tell us the good news first?
Well, there are two sides to that story, and let me just first of all say that in the last 100 years, the life expectancy for African Americans has doubled. In the last 50 years, the rate of heart disease and stroke in our community has gone down by 50%. Now that's pretty good news. Now the bad news is that, you know, the disparity between the health status of African Americans and white Americans is still a problem. So that's where we're working. Now, my philosophy is, just imagine that if we were on the banks of a river having a picnic and you saw babies floating down the river. You know, your inclination, jump in, save the babies, try to revive them. But the really smart ones would run upstream and try to figure out who is throwing these babies in the water. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we have to attack, you know, health in several ways. And I'm sure Tanya will have things to say about how we can really improve the health across the spectrum. But you obviously have to take care of people who are sick. But right now we only spend 4% of our budget on prevention. Now, no matter what you do, it's never going to be as good as preventing the problem in the first place.
What can we do to prevent the problem?
We've got to improve our relationships with one another. That's the number one thing I'm talking about, your relationship with your children, with your partners, with your coworkers, because the environment around you impacts your health even more so than many of the things that we've been stressing, like exercise and nutrition and proper sleep. We really have to examine the way in which we relate to one another, because we actually exchange information in so many ways other than words, and that has an impact directly on our health. We are a working organism, marvelously complicated. We are also part of a larger universe, if you want to look at it that way. Most of us, as an example, who have flown over a couple of time zones, realize our bodies change. You know, we don't really work quite as well. It takes us a little while to get up to par. A lot of older cultures realize that we are connected to the earth and to other things like the moon and stars and all that, but we have sort of poo-pooed that, and we concentrate on things that we have been able to measure. The good thing now is science is catching up with some of the traditional cultures. We're actually measuring ways in which our bodies and our health are impacted by dimensions and other forces, electromagnetic waves, things like that, that we haven't been able to measure before. They've been there, just like germs were here, bacteria back in the 1700s, but we didn't have a way of looking at them through a microscope. We're now moving to a level where there are other things that impact our health besides nutrition and exercise that we have to take into account, and they are really, you know, magnified in terms of how we relate to one another.
But having said that, I've been personally amazed at the impact of religion and spirituality on our health. Dr. Robert Hummer did a marvelous study from the Household Survey, and he's able to report that African Americans who go to church regularly live 14 years longer than African Americans who don't go to church. The advantage for white Americans is 7 years. He reported. So I always advise my white brothers and sisters, if they want the other 7, they got to go to black churches. But as Tanya would point out, though, you know, think about what you get from a religious experience. You go to church, you get hugs, kisses, you get smiles, you get, you know, how are yous, you get to sing, you get to meditate, maybe you cry a little bit, but you're engaged in a community of like believers. Think about how nourishing and healthy that can be.
So let me see if I understand this correctly. If I go to church regularly, by hugging and being close and being spiritually uplifted in the church, I will live 14 years longer than if I didn't go to church at all.
Well, it's a correlation.
Just an average.
Yeah, it's a correlation, because obviously you know that the healthier people are more likely to go to church. The ones that are hanging out at the street corners, staying up all night, Saturday night, and drinking and carousing are probably the unhealthier ones. So it's not so much that going to church is going to just automatically improve your health, but the healthy ones are more likely to go to church. So we admit that clearly, but you can't have a religious experience, though, without feeling uplifted and feeling healthier. And not only that, you get a lot of information, that you can bring back with you and share in your life. So I think that's part of what Tanya is talking about, that we have to define health as more than whether you have high blood pressure or not, or whether you have cancer or not, or whether you're, health is so much more than the absence of disease.
Right, that sense of connection that occurs in religious institutions, some of them, although we all know some people who are in church who are sending out energies that are not so good. But, it's the sense of connection that I think is contributing to the longevity for, on the average. But even outside of a church or religious experience, our sense of connection to each other will impact whether disease expresses itself or not. When we all know if you're under stress, whether you're in college, exam time, that's when you catch the cold. Or if you are going through a divorce, or if you just lost a spouse, within 2 years, I've forgotten the statistics, if you've been together a long time, the other spouse will tend to die too. There's nothing that says that there was a disease that was present at the time of the first spouse dying, and that it caused the other one to die. But it's just that, people do die of broken hearts. What happens when some of your essential exchanges, the person who knows who you are, who honors who you are, when that connection is broken, then the whole body reacts to that, and then you can have the expression of disease. But by the same token, good relationships can kind of enhance it.
Yeah, the correlation is also made with loneliness.
Yeah.
And loneliness is a real killer. You find people living alone, and especially for men. Women apparently can cope with loneliness and, much better than men can. But it's a real killer. If you see people living alone and not interacting with others, the disease, they're so vulnerable to disease. And not only that, obviously, if they have a heart attack, there's nobody around to at least call 911. So there's vulnerability from that side as well. So, I don't think we were designed as human beings to live alone. It's a real killer.
Yeah, and the only reason I think women may do a little bit better is that women tend to have relationships with other women, and they talk to them more about some of their closer feelings. So even though they may not be in a partnership, male, female, or whatever relationship, they still have 2 or 3 other people that they can share some of themselves with. But don't get me wrong, there are a lot of lonely women out there as well, and that's impacting their health.
But what we're trying to say is that it all fit together, because these kinds of issues may drive high blood pressure, that may drive heart disease, that may the 7 steps to good health that we promote includes spirituality, blood pressure control, cholesterol control, diabetes and weight control, making sure that we get enough exercise, nutrition, get a good night's sleep. Not smoking, I hope I don't have to emphasize that one, but also making sure that you're accessing good health care. You do not want to be in a system where people don't care about you and invested in your good health. And it's when you go